Good day everyone, I am Denise Cristal Galabo and I'm going to talk about the week 14 and 15. These are the additional informations about our subject. So, before the actual conduct of the polygraph examination, these things should be considered by our examiner. So, first is he need to ensure that the subject is in good condition. So, the subject must be in his well state. The next is the examiner should also make sure that the instrument is working properly. So the examiner should ensure that the both subject and the machine itself should be properly working. So next is also the test should follow specific procedures. So lahat ng mga dapat na procedures na gagawin from the pre-test or the pre-interview up to the post-test is dapat i-follow yun ng maayos. Any errors during the conduct of the polygraph examination will affect the interpretation of the outcome. So, aapektuhan ang any mga errors na ma-occur sa examination doon sa result mismo. Continuing, so sa previous reports na-report na itong about the ideal polygraph examination room. So, mag-thorough reading lang ako. So, it is need to be specially equipped and furnished room should be set aside for polygraph examination. So it must have one-way mirror and a concealed microphone so that a person or persons in the observation room may hear as well as see what occurs in the examination room. Next, it should be spacious for 2 persons. It must be well lighted. It must not be decorated kasi magkakaroon ito ng distractions sa examinee. Next is it must be 90% soundproof and it must be well ventilated. These pictures are the outline of an ideal polygraph examination room. So makikita natin sa pictures na may mirror, tsaka may dalawang chairs, desk at table kung saan may observer sa examinee at saka examiner. So next is these are the main objectives of the polygraph examination. So first main objective is to ascertain if the person is telling the truth by verifying statement or comparing contradictory statements. So dito natin malalaman if nagsasabi ba ng totoo yung examinee. So next is to obtain additional investigative leads to the facts of an offense. Third is to locate fruits or tools of the crime or whereabouts of the wanted person. So lastly is to eliminate innocent suspects. This is the most important main objective of the polygraph examination is to eliminate those innocent suspects. Following is the limitations of the polygraph examination. So first is it is invaluable aid but never a substitute for an investigation. It means it's invaluable because it is not admissible in our court of law. So and it is also not to be a substitute to our investigation. So because in our due process magfa-follow talaga tayo ng nung first is the preliminary investigation and so on and so forth. So next is it is not a lie detector. It is a scientific diagnostic instrument. Only measures our physiological reactions of our body. It doesn't really tell if a person is lying or not. So third, it does not determine facts. It records responses to what the subject knows to be true. So facts lang na magagather natin sa polygraph examination is that it is only limited to the examinee. So kung ano yung mga responses niya, doon lamang natin malalaman if nagsasabi ba siya ng totoo or hindi. So lastly is it is only as accurate as the examiner is competent. So magbase pa rin talaga yung examination results sa examiner mismo. If magaling ba siya, expert ba siya, at saka he really does his well in examination process. So next is the conditions of the subject to be considered fit for polygraph examination. So first, the subject must have a good night's sleep before the test. So dapat may saktong tulog yung examinee natin. Next is the subject must refrain from smoking for at least 2 hours before the test. So he must be free from physical and sexual abuse. Next is the subject must not be interrogated for a prolonged period of time because it will lead that the examinee or the subject maybe is mape-pressure siya. So lastly is it must refrain from the use of alcohol and drugs for at least 12 hours before the test. So next, subject must not be hungry. He or she must not be suffering from illness, fever, cold, cough, allergen, etc. So he must not be highly nervous. So sa mga female naman na subjects is dapat hindi sila in their state of menstrual cycle kasi maapektuhan nito ang responses ng subject natin, and she must not have sex indulgence before the test. So these are the following constitutional rights of the subject. So first, he or she must be informed of his right to remain silent because anything said can and will be used against him in the court of law. So next, he has the right to have a competent and independent counsel, preferably of his own choice. So if he doesn't have power to do so, the government will provide one for him. So he or she has the right against self-incrimination. In our country, we have the law in Article 3, Section 17 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution that enriches against self-incrimination. So the subject has the right that he should not compel to provide any testimonies against himself. Next is the purpose of taking written a statement of consent. So the examiner has a legal basis that no human violation is committed. So ito yung basehan. So next is that the subject voluntarily submitted himself to undergo a polygraph examination. So there is no harassment na ginawa at voluntarily na sinurrender nung subject na mag-conduct siya or mag-undergo siya ng polygraph examination. So lastly, it is an arm against harassment. The following are the factors that are responsible for the errors of polygraph examination. So first is that nervousness experienced by a subject who is telling the truth. So may mga tao talagang normal na nervyoso. So nagkakaroon ito ng error or effect, or ito ay isang factor na nagkakaroon ng error sa polygraph examination. So next is the physiological abnormalities like high blood pressures and disease of the heart. So if yung isa is high blood or may sakit sa puso, is magkakaroon talaga ito ng epekto sa polygraph examination. So next is the mental abnormalities. Next is unresponsive in the leaving guilty subject because of no fear of detection to ability control response using specific mental sets of attitudes. So next is attempt to beat the machine by controlled breathing or by muscular flexing. So may mga subject talaga or na kaya nilang kontrolin yung kanilang mga breathing at saka yung mga responses nila na magkakaroon pa rin ng effect sa polygraph examination. So next is, these are the qualities of an effective polygraph examiner. So tapos na tayo sa examinee or the subject. So punta naman tayo sa examiner. So technically, he must have complete knowledge of the instrument and capabilities and limitation. So dapat may alam siya na gamitin or mag-operate ng machine. So he must have training or undergo some trainings about how to conduct polygraph examination. So next is, he or she must be morally sincere, desire to a polygraph examiner. So must be a person of high personal integrity and must continually strive to increase his own proficiency through constant study and research. Next is, he always bear in his mind his primary obligation to the subject, that is afford him all possible safeguards against errors, and must never accept for polygraph examination any subject who is not physically or mentally fit. And lastly is, he must be an impartial seeker of truth by conducting examinations professionally and ethically. These are the important qualities that the examiner have, kasi nga nagbabase ang result ng polygraph examination if yung examiner itself is competent. So he must be impartially seeker, dapat is hindi siya bias. So he must be in a fair judgment in conducting the examination. So further information, so the subject or the examinee refers to the person undergoing polygraph examination. The other is the examiner, or the polygraphist is the person conducting the polygraph examination. So moving forward, so these are the responsibilities of the investigator to the subject. So ito na yung investigator at saka na subject. So in asking the subject involved in the criminal case under investigation to take the polygraph test, the investigator should do the following. So first is learn enough about polygraph, kasi siya yung mag-i-inform about the polygraph test, because the subject may know very little of may have been misinformed about it. So to avoid misinformation about the subject, next is that the investigator should not reveal details on an offense which may be utilized in the application of peak of tension. So peak of tension means that it is used to determine if an individual possesses knowledge related to a specific crime or event. So next is to suggest the test as a means to indicate someone's subject's innocence. Next is the stress the test capability of indicating whether a person is telling the truth through the recorded responses. Next is to assure the subject that the examiner is qualified and impartial to all persons involved in the case, and to avoid any claim for the instrument or examiner that is not backed by facts. So next, moving forward, the responsibilities of the polygraph examiner to his subject. So first is the polygraph examiner must recognize the facts that his primary responsibility must be on the person who has voluntarily submitted himself for the polygraph examination. So 'di ba nga is mag-voluntarily surrender yung examinee sa examiner. So he has the full responsibility of the examinee. So next is he should always give advice to the subject of his constitutional rights against self-incrimination before conducting any examination. So next is he should see it that the instrument he utilized is in good working condition, and that he makes a permanent simultaneous recording on cardiovascular and respiratory changes. Kasi doon ma-detect if through the responses of the examinee if nagsasabi ba siya ng totoo or hindi. Next is he should first administer at least 2 or more charts before rendering a definitive verbal or written opinion based on chart analysis. And lastly, he should be familiar with the techniques and procedures employed before offering any testimony concerning the charts or conclusion presented by another examiner. So these informations are the additional informations about our subject. So that will be all. Thank you. Good day.